Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. It's time once again to take the time out of our week to do another Japanese lesson. Similar to a couple weeks ago, this lesson will be focused on verbs. However, this time, we'll be talking about a special kind of conjugation we do with verbs in order to present a request from someone. And this form is what we call... Get my mouse here. Call this he form, or in Romaji, he form. In the past, we've talked about how to conjugate verbs before, usually talking about doing a verb in the present tense or the past tense, like, hello Kenji, good to see you around. We're just getting started, just to do a little bit of an overview on what we've learned so far. So far, we've talked about conjugating. Actually, I'm not going to write out what I'm saying here. I'm just going to write down the important stuff. I don't know why I started writing out what I was saying. We've learned how to do different kinds of conjugations. So far, conjugations. We've gone over. So the conjugations we know so far, the most basic ones are the present tense, where we take a verb in its basic form. Say, for example, we could take the verb to eat, tabe, taberu, taberu, to eat, taberu. And if you say that you are currently eating, if you're trying to indicate the action of eating happening in the past tense, in the present tense, it would be be us. Eating. To be eating. And tabemashita is actually the past tense. So we take to eat, and that becomes ta be ma ita. And this is pretty common amongst pretty much all verbs. Mas as an ending. When we say tabemasu, ikimasu, yomimasu, the mas ending is the present tense version of that ending to say that you are currently doing something. While mashita, to have eaten. So that's the main kind of verb conjugation we talked about so far. But what if we wanted to ask someone for something? What if we wanted to ask someone to read something? If we want to ask someone to eat something? If we want to ask someone to run, to jump, to do anything? If we want to ask someone to do something, we have the te form. Let me write this again. We have the te form. We could call this the command form. I can't write. Command. So this is what we use when we want to tell someone that we want them to do something. Or if we tell them that they are permitted to do something, if you're requesting something from someone. Very formal, very instructive. But the te form is essentially what we use to know that in context of the sentence, that something is being requested or instructed of someone. Additionally, or it's used to connect to verbs. And this is what the main part of the lesson today is going to be about. We're going to talk about these two topics, first starting with the command form, first talking about how to do things, talking about how to instruct someone to do something. And this is kind of a thick topic. There's a lot of mnemonics that exist in order for us to get through the conjugations, but this specifically It's both easy and hard at the same time. There's a very common pattern amongst all the conjugations, but with how Japanese syllables work, the rules are split into a bunch of different conditions based on what word we're working with. For example, or actually, this conjugation depends on two things. Is affected by is it an U-verb or U-verb? And that's a topic that we sort of talked about back when we first introduced verbs, about the different kinds of conjugations based on U-verbs and U-verbs. And we will talk about all these conditions, so you'll, even if you don't fully remember the properties, you'll see different kinds of conjugations and how they sort of affect each other. And the other condition is, if it is a U-verb, what... Oh, not a U-verb, if it's an U-verb, sorry. If it's an U-verb, what is the final character in the word? So these are the specific cases here. So depending on, we already know the dichotomy between U-verbs and U-verbs and their conjugations. But if it's specifically an U-verb, a verb that ends in a sound that is not ru, or usually we can also say godan or ichidan verbs, that's another terminology. That last kana, that last character, will tell us how the ending is changed. So let's talk about U-verbs first, or not, sorry, U-verbs, because they have a very specific, consistent rule that never changes. So te form U-verbs. And these kinds of verbs basically consist of any word that ends with the character du. But it's not true for every single character in that case, but a lot, like, sort of like how every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. Not all U-verbs, or not all verbs that end with ru are U-verbs, but all U-verbs end with ru. It's kind of confusing, but again, this sort of vocabulary thing is something that you'll also pick up when you just practice vocabulary and practice sentence structure, but this is just the basic rule. So, examples of U-verbs are, like I said earlier, taberu, taberu. Exactly, very simple, very simple. The ru gets dropped and becomes tabete. Taberu becomes actually, I'm not even going to write the rule yet. Just examples of U-verbs. Taberu becomes tabete. We also have to look at miru. And the rule is very simple. Change the ru to a te. Very simple for U-verbs. It's a very simple rule. So the word taberu, taberu. If you wanted to ask someone to eat something, instead of saying taberu, you would say taberu. And a lot of times, tabete, or te verbs in general, are followed, as Reina has said, te verbs are followed with kudasai. Please do this. Please eat. You know, you're a parent and your kid is a NEET sitting in their room for 16 hours a day not leaving. Tabete kudasai. I don't know if you're alive still. And miru, as another example, miru becomes mite. Please eat, it's been 3 days. Tabete kudasai. Very simple rule, very simple rule. But again, you'll see some examples of this as we go through the U-Verb examples. But for verbs classified as U-Verbs, and right now the difference between Godan and Ichidan, whether or not which one is Ru and which one is U, is, I forgot to write that down. But very simple, we changed the Ru to a te, and that's our conjugation. Mite kudasai. Look here. Koko mite kudasai. Please look here. So that is U-Verb. Very simple, very simple. We don't need to do anything complicated there. But then, te form. And we have U-Verbs. This is where it gets complicated. So, the U-Verbs... Yeah, and that's actually miru. This is miru. Mieru actually means two different things. Miru and mieru, I believe, are two different things. Mieru. Let me consult Jusho. Because I'm pretty sure that... Yeah. So, mieru, I believe, would be conjugated as miete. Like how Marth says his taunt in Super Smash Bros. But they both are related. So, it's an understandable mistake. Especially since, you know, we're all learning. They are different words, though. And it's tricky because, you know, we see the kanji, we know that it's miru. Minna, miete kure. So, U-Verbs have conditions based on what the final character is. So, if it ends in U, Su, or Ru, see, we could say iu, you say, or the verb matsu. When this one gets conjugated, you'll probably recognize what it means. To wait. And this is toru. I forgot to write the two here. So you can see, each of these verbs end with either u, tsu, or ru. And these will all have the same kind of conjugation. The way we conjugate this, replace final ana. There we go, yeah. Miru is to see, while mieru is to be seen or to be in sight. So like, miete kure is asking people to see him, while miru is saying that he's seeing them. Replace final kana with te. So, if we take this rule here, you, to speak, turns into one of my favorite songs. Itte. So, to speak becomes itte, or please speak. Here we have... No, I'm not actually going to sing Yorushika's hit song, Itte. That's not where this is going. And then, Matsu. Becomes... You can see how the wording here, the suffix works. matsu becomes matte. Very commonly heard in anime. Matte kudasai, please wait, or chotto matte, wait a little bit. Right. It turns that U sound into an A sound. That's like the big thing. But the rule changes depending on what the U sounds change into. And the biggest thing that you'll notice is that it depends on... Chotto a minute. It depends on the case of what that final kana is, and if it is sort of muddled. Like, we'll get to it with the next case, actually. So, here we have toru, to take. Toru becomes... I actually think my stroke order is all kinds of messed up for this one. Totte. So please take, or take this please. Totte kudasai. So these are the first section of U-Verbs. Utsu and ru. Utsuru become te, where it has that, this little tsu symbol is not the full tsu sound, but rather it connects to the next kana. So if we were to romanize this, it would be... Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Reina. That would be totte, not ikite? Kite? This is ite. So you can see the T is doubled up on. Mate and totte. So that's the rule. That's the rule for U, Tsu, and Ru. We drop that last character, and we change it to a te. Next up, let me work with this. Let me play around with the selection tool to optimize this. Traction selection is pretty helpful here. And then addition selection. Right now I have no idea what that is. Oh, it just looks bad. If that's what you're telling me. We'll fix that up when we get back to it. So, oops. You can see the version of it in the other sections. Alright. So now, if the U-Verb ends in, the next rule is mu, bu, or nu. See, as we know with the certain verbs like yomu, to read, yomu, to read, nde, correct. And we'll just go through this. Asobu, or to play. So, asobu. You're not too late, Siren. We just started talking about the words. And correct, Kenji. So, thank you for that, Siren. What we're talking about, Siren, is how we conjugate verbs in order to tell people how to do things, in order to give commands, or in order to make requests of people. We're talking about how the conjugation changes there. We talked about how we talk about present tense with statements like yomimasu, asobimasu, or like mimasu, that mas ending is a present tense ender, mashita being a past tense ender, and now we're talking about the te form. You'll see a lot of these words are going to end with te or de in order to make requests. And we know that nu, probably the most commonly known nu ending word. I think it's kind of brutal that a lot of media that on this topic for conjugations uses this as their verb. Shinu, So this is to play. And shinu is to die. So let's talk about the conjugation here. The rule is to replace the last kana with nde. Like Kenji said earlier, asobu would turn into asonde. Kitsure shimasu ka? Shinde. Oh. Kitsure shimasu ka shinde kudasai? You're right, that is a usage of the request form. So. Yomu. I can't believe I didn't, like, read that immediately and figure out what it was. Yomu. To read, to request someone to read, you would say, we have yo, the kanji for to read, yonde. So that mu, this character here gets replaced with yonde. We have asobu, this character here. And this is partially actually hidden as a grammar, or as a vocab lesson, because obviously if I'm going to talk about all these forms, I will have to talk about some different kinds of kanji to explain and give examples of what these verbs look like. So asobu looks like this, or asobu turns into asonde. So if your kid is just cooped up to his room, just watching TV all day, not getting any exercise, say asonde. Go play outside. Soto asonde. I think that's probably how you'd say it. So asobu becomes asonde. And shinu, or when the kid really wants attention, go outside. Touch grass. But mom, I don't want to asonde. Shinu. But mom, I want to asonde my video games. Becomes the famous shinde. Ne, asonde, sensei. Something like that. I'll play later. I'll be playing on Saturday. So, the last one, shinu, becomes shinde. Like I said, it's commands. So, you know, omae wa mo shindeiru actually will have to do with connecting two actions. So, this is the command form, but as we mentioned at the start, this form is used when we're connecting two verbs together. So, as in Calliope Mori's famous, excuse me, but could you please RIP? She says, Shitsura shimasu ga shinde kudasai, requesting you to do her a favor and die. But it's also used in Kenshiro's famous Omae wa mo shindeiru, where he basically tells them that they are already dead. That it's connecting the existing to be with to die. So you'll see that there are examples of these kinds of conjugations in different ways, because that's just how the Japanese language works. So you're bound to find famous examples of each of these somewhere. Nani? Alright, so the next conjugation. These next conjugations actually are going to be very specific. So if the verb ends in the character ku, see, this is to write. This is kaku, to write. Kaku. And also we have to pull or to draw, and this is hiku. It's actually not kakute. And this is where that where the rules you'll see that we'll have to remember this mnemonic. And even like today, I remember that there was a mnemonic device that existed to remember the Japanese conjugations, and it actually helped a lot. The rule, actually, I don't know why I wrote the rule when I didn't write that for any of the other ones. You replace the last kana with not just add a te on the end, or not just replace the te. It's actually ite. Nice. So kaku, to write, becomes I'm proud of my ability to sort of be able to handwrite kanji and it be maybe legible, but I've never had a Japanese person or someone familiar with kanji to tell me that my kanji was unreadable. But this is kind of a mess right here. Kaku becomes kaite. Kaite kudasai, please write. And then we also have, just as another example, I like to give multiple examples here so you can sort of see more than just in a vacuum, more than just that one example. Iku becomes iite. So it has that long I sound. Kaite, iite. Very simple, just... Actually, I guess this is a harder one, a harder version. You wouldn't really guess that it adds the E sound to it. So, kaku becomes kaite, iku becomes hiite. And then similarly, we have the ku sound, but if it ends in gu, see, we have gu, yeah. So we have oyogu, which is to swim. And we also have isogu. Isogu. So this is to hurry. We replace the last kana with... So if ending with ku made us replace the last kana with ite, gu, very similarly, is going to make us replace it with ide. Close. Oyoide. And you can remember this rule because if ku uses the te, the muddled sound, that dakten, is going to transfer over to the conjugation as well. Oyogu, oyoide. It keeps that muddled sound. It's consistent, at least. So, we have to swim. Oyogu becomes oyoide. So that's asking someone to please swim. Like maybe he went to the beach and I don't know, your kid got all ready, but then they're scared of the water. Oyoide kudasai. Please swim. We drove 5 hours all the way to the beach for you to get to go to the water, and you just chose, you're just not even swimming. What's up with that? But I can understand. The boardwalk is ikanaide. And then isogu. This is to hurry. Becomes isoide. So isoide. Umi ga Itamon. I can't read that kanji. I don't know. Maybe I forgot what it means, but I cannot read it. Oh, the ocean is scary. Umi ga kawaii damon. So there we go. We have oyogu turns into oyoide. Isogu turns into isoide. Please hurry. You know, you're trying to get ready. You have like a wedding to attend in about 30 minutes, and whoever you're taking with the wedding is still in bed, not ready to go, and it's about an hour drive away. Isoide kudasai. It is specific, isn't it? Doesn't come from any life experiences, but maybe a combination of different life experiences. Oh, good evening, Spuds. We're just about halfway. Actually, not halfway. We're just about at the end here. So now, if the verb ends in su, we only have a couple more rules to go through. If the verb ends in su, for example, let's see, hanasu, or to speak. Hanasu. Like, it's similar to iu, though I'm actually not sure what the main difference between ite and hanasu, or iu and hanasu is. And we also have esu. Because I know that they both are in regards to speaking, but I forget exactly what the specific context is in which you'd use iu versus hanasu. And that's something I have to look up myself, now that I'm thinking about it. So, do you speak? I think one of them is like to speak, while the other one is to say. And this is to erase. Oh, iu is to say, yeah, and then hanasu is to speak, like to be able to speak, like a language. So hanasu, to speak, kesu, to erase. All we have to do is replace the final kana with shite. So kind of like the past tense, actually. It's very similar to the past tense of suru. So yeah, hanashite. Is that shaberu, Reina? I'm assuming it's just another word for speaking. I think that's what that is. But yes, hanasu becomes hanashite. Hanashite kudasai. And kesu becomes keshite. You've watched Full Metal Alchemist opening, or Full Metal Alchemist 2003, and you remember that fourth opening? That whole chorus where they go, Keshite! Mirai to shite! Yuga wo... I don't remember the rest of the words of the song. But yeah, keshite is like telling someone to erase something. So, again, this whole set of conjugation is all related to making requests. Anasu, the dictionary form, turns into anashimasu when we are talking about someone speaking in the present tense, and it turns into hanashite, missing tongue radical. Wait, where? Oh, thank you, Spuds. I did it both times, too. That big cringe, as they would say. I missed an entire radical there. I instead turned it to isu and ishite. Oops. Always make sure you finish writing your characters. So this is going to be like that. Thank you. Kurinji. You're just nodding at this point. We'll go over it again We'll go over it all, and this is sort of like the rules here, but again, the rules don't mean much until we actually can put them into action. And I think once we put them into action, once you see it used in sentences, which we'll get to next, you'll see sort of how it flows, and I think it should make more sense when we get to that point. But right now, this is sort of like the explanation on the rules. And we also have one last thing to talk about. So, we went over all the verb endings, and what we need to talk about now is the following. When converting a noun to a verb. Just as an example, there's a common one that we see on everyone's Twitter bios. You know, benkyo. This one, benkyo on its own, simply means studying. It just means study. Like your studies, learning. It's not a verb. This is a noun. Benkyo. Right. We turn that into benkyo. Suru. The command form of suru. So if you were to request someone, like, I don't know, a friend of yours, or maybe your own child is studying and is struggling in their studies, and you want them to study more, you think they're spending too much time on social media, playing video games, you would say, benkyo shite. Just like su, suru also conjugates by shite. And it's kind of confusing because shite also is like past tense. So shite. So it's very important that we keep that context in mind, whether or not, like, what is happening in the sentence, to know what exactly kind of form we're using here. So, benkyou shite kudasai. Or benkyou shite nasai yo. Yeah. Please study. So, all we do is replace that suru with shite. Then... So, as opposed to saying that you're studying, you're requesting someone to study. Benkyou is telling someone, please, please, God, study. You cannot afford to have a 7 in my class. Please study for your tests. I beg of you. Benkyou shite kudasai. Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel sometimes. More often than I probably should. And there's a very, very, very convenient little mnemonic that they have here. So we talked about all the forms. And there's this image that I pulled off of Google. So you can see, it says te form. And it's essentially saying, when your words end in these syllables, this is the ending. Do it on the bus ride, yeah, right? So if you have ut, su, or du, you end it with te. Mu, bu, nu, any word that ends with those kana, and with nde. Ku end with ite, gu end with ide. Su and sudu both end in shite. And kudu I didn't talk about, but this kudu is when we use that verb to come, to arrive at. Kudu becomes kite. And that's te form. And then the right side just shows examples. Since ao end with that u sound. Actually, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse here. let's see. Actually, I could just do this. 1 second. Let me pull this up. I could just put it on the blackboard itself. I could have just made it its own separate layer. I don't know why I didn't do that. I am somewhat ridiculous. So let me do that instead so you can see my mouse. Alright. So you can see here that... Let me just move my mouse over here. So it says... Commission a pointer, yeah. Ow. End with that U sound. And it's here. You could... Oh, that would be so cool if you had like a pointer that followed my mouse even like when I had the pen tool on. That would be really cool. So ow ends with te. So atte. Matsu ends with su. So I get matte. Like chotto matte. Yeah, that would be really cute. Yes, oh, so I can move it OBS, that would be really cool. Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you for that, for offering. And uru, to sell, becomes utte, please sell. Like you're a door-to-door salesman and they need you to sell something. Then mu, bu, nu, nomu, to drink, nonde. So instead of drinking, it's please drink. Tobu, I don't know what tobu actually is, becomes tonde. Oh, I think that might be to fly. Tobu and then tonde. And then shinu, as we said earlier, shinu becomes shinde. And the more you see words written in this requesting form, A, the more this will stick, and B, the more knowing this will help remember what form of requesting goes to what kind of ending. So if you see something that ends with su, you know to end it with shite. You know that it ends with nu, so you end it with nde. And what I prepared. So, alongside this form here, they actually, in the textbooks, and like, actually even this was from a video, it comes with a little like song to go along with it. It's a very simple song. It's like a kid's song. So it's set to the tune of "Oh My Darling Clementine." And I figure I might as well, if I'm going to show this list, I might as well also sing the song. So, can you guys hear that? Can you guys hear that? I'm hoping you can. So we have the te form. This song essentially helps us remember what the endings to each verb are and how they are conjugated. And it sounds like this. Actually, sorry. I think I lead in with vocals. So it's utsurute mubununde kuite guide surushite kurukite te form. Ooh. Te form. And the second verse has us talk about the verbs and their conjugations. So we get awatte, matsumatte, uru utte, nomu nonde, tobu tonde, shinu shinde, kaku kaite, oyogu oyoide. And that's the song. And it helps us sort of get that relationship between... This is much better than this song I learned for this. So, right. So any verbs that end with u, tsu, and ru end with te. Mubu and nu end with nde, and so on. So ao becomes atte, nomu becomes nonde. And let's do it one more time fully without stopping, and maybe I'll hit all the right chords this time. So from the top. Utsurutte mubununde kuite guide sushite surushite きててフォーム慌て待ってうるうって飲む飲んで飛ぶ飛んで死ぬ死んで学書いて泳ぐ泳いで I played the wrong chord at the end. And that is the mnemonic device that I taught myself while studying and preparing this lesson. And it actually helped a lot. I have a much better understanding of how to conjugate te form after I spent like a good part of an hour trying to A, learn the chords, and B, singing the song to myself. But it made sense. So that is te form. What other light stick replacement do you have? Are those cucumbers? And that is the te form song. And now that we've gone over this, now that we've talked about the conjugation, we have to talk about how are we going to use it in context now? Talk about what exactly are we going to... What kind of sentences can we use this command form for? And that's the next part of this lesson. So, the first thing that we're going to talk about is this. We've actually mentioned it quite a few times in the stream already, but it is te kudasai. So we talked about the request form. Now let's talk about actually making requests from people. Kudasai. So this represents a polite request. So say I asked the following. Nihongo no hon o yonde. Yes, kudasai basically means please. Yonde. And you can see because it's yonde, yomu, the mu gets replaced with nde. So yonde kudasai. Please read. Or if we say, like we mentioned before, shinde kudasai. Please I'll censor it out. It seems a little rude. A little bit too mean. Itsuroshimasu ga shinde kudasai. With the bass. But really, that's like the main time you'll be using shite. I don't know what that says. I don't know what that kanji says. But it's another request. Because we can see that it has the shite kudasai. Which, again... Oh, yasushiku shite kudasai, please be nice. Or please be kind, or gentle. So, again, it's important... Even if you don't remember the rules, it's important to know this vocabulary. Yeah, that is... You're right, it is something I say a lot. Please be nice to me. Like, this te kudasai, shite kudasai, lets you know that from context that the sentence in question has to do with some kind of polite request. So next up, a very simple, straightforward section. We've already talked about it a lot as we went over each of the examples of te form. But the next one is not something we've talked about. And that is te mo I desu. Which, what this is used for, represents giving permission. However, if used as a question, so if we use this sentence ender, it represents giving permission. But if we use it as a question with ka, it represents asking permission. Yeah, some words you can't salvage when you mess them up. I can save the A. So it represents asking permission. So for example, you could say on o. So instead of asking someone to read a book, you could say hon o yonde mo ii desu ka? So what this represents, hon o yonde o ii desu ka? Can I read this book, or may I read this book, or the book? We didn't say koko. We didn't specify like a pointer word, so it would be, can I read the book? If I added kono to the start of it, kono hon o yonde mo ii desu ka? You're right, context-based language, you're right. But we could also add kono to the start, and that would also more specify what book we're talking about. Or we could say sono hon o yonde mo ii desu ka? Because we know sono means that, so it could represent a book far away from the speaker. And the response to this, like I said, when we use this te mo ii desu with ka, that represents someone asking for permission. The question of, do I have the permission to read this? You could respond, hi. And we would reply with the verb, yon yonde mo ii desu. Yes, you may read it. That's all you have to do. You take the verb that they used. In this case, we used yon, and so you just say, "Can I read?" They say, "Can I read the book?" And you say, "Hai, yonde mo ii desu." Yes, you may read it. You don't have to specify the book again because they already specified what the object is in question. So you can just confirm that they can do that specific action. So, te kudasai is requesting something from someone. Te mo ii desu is about permission and asking for permission. So two different uses of that request form. So it's important to know what the difference is in order to ask for different things, so that while you know that the te form is for requests, you need to also know how to frame those questions. 125. Oh, 125 is the number of slides that we're on. I have not deleted any of the slides. We are still in the same Photoshop document that I've been in for every lesson since I've started doing these. So I guess on average we go through about 10 layers a lesson. The next rule we're going to talk about, and this is the last of the command-based rules. Te wa iimasen. So here, When we use ha after a sentence ender like this, sometimes you'll see dewa. This is going to be read again as wa instead of ha. So, te wa iimasen. And this is a very specific case. This isn't something that you're going to really say very often. You might see it often because what this represents is Why did I write 2 R's? Or that? I can't roll my R's. Oh, I'm not even going to try to do it anymore. Represents a I can't. Oh, my handwriting is off the charts in a not good way today. Represents a prohibited action. So, for example, say you're at a park at night, and the 5-0 come to get you, the coppers come to get you, because it's already past sunset and you're not supposed to be there. They might say something like, Oko o a on de asonde wa iimasen. Well, I mean, this is prohibition. It's things that are prohibited. We have to be strict here. I mean, if we want to use a nicer example, we could say, I don't know, maybe you and your sibling or your friend were playing Beyblades, and you didn't have a Beyblade stadium, so you decided, well, if we don't have a Beyblade stadium, maybe we could use my bathtub. And then you destroy the entire bathtub, and your mom comes in, and then she tells you can't play here. Koko asonde wa iimasen. Essentially, it means that you can't play here. This is not a personal anecdote, actually. This is a famed picture that has made the rounds across the internet. I saw it many years ago of just, apparently some kids ruined a bathtub with some Beyblades, and the mom sold the Beyblades on the internet. It was a very strange picture, but it was also a very strangely specific incident that I couldn't imagine using in relation to this kind of topic. But here we are. You can't play here. Koko asonde wa iimasen. So that de wa iimasen, this represents prohibition. And not prohibition in the historical sense, but that something is literally not allowed to happen. And you wouldn't use this when you're asking someone not to do something like from friend to friend, or even like from parent to child, unless you were like really, really mad at them, like for destroying your bathtub with Beyblades. Like, there aren't many situations where you would be that mad, that you would have to be this harsh. So, this is typically reserved for authority. So these were the 3 essentially cases where te form as a request, as a request, as a prohibition, and as a attempt to get permission to do something. Sorry. And at the beginning, we mentioned that not only does te form have to do with permission, but also, let me see what layer it's on. Te form is also going to be used in a lot of layers today. We're going to now talk about, and this is going to be the last thing that we talk about, describing 2 activities. if you remember, if you recall, in the past, we've talked about how to connect two nouns by using to, like Nihongo to Eigo, Japanese and English, Hikari to Yami, light and darkness, if we're gonna be very weeaboo about this. Make a new layer here. So let's talk about describing two actions. So, for nouns, we connect them using to. See, Nihongo, Nihongo to Eigo. I stroke around, this one's probably incorrect. Eigo. Japanese and English. But for verbs, we have to use something different. Dose. Oops. Does not work for verbs. Instead, K form connects two verbs. And we're going to just focus on two verbs for now. We're not going to focus on multiple verbs because one step at a time. We don't want to get too overboard here. Ganbatte benkyou shimasu. Yeah. Do your best at studying. I should probably move my chat box up, maybe. I feel like I have to like tilt my head to let everyone else see what is being said in the chat. So the te form connects two verbs, and the way this works, when we want to say that we are doing an action that involves two separate actions, the tense is determined by the second verb. And let's look at two examples of this, because this is something that you'll probably need multiple examples to see. So let's take this, and I want to copy this into the next layer. And let's go to the next layer. Oop. The te form connects two verbs, and the tense is decided by the second verb. So for example, if we take the following sentence here, so we'll be using a couple of kanji, but also make sure that for a long sentence like this, that I highlight everything so that you can tell what is what. So we get kyou wa 6時. And a lot of these kanji are things that we've seen before. They're recycled from what I've been going over the past weeks. 6時に o 起きて then just write this out first and I'll read the whole thing out. And 今日 shimashita. So let's break this sentence down. I know this is a long sentence. This is much longer than a lot of sentences that we've worked with before. It has a lot more going on in it. So this reads as 今日は6時に起きて勉強しました。今日は And actually this sentence pretty neatly translates, like piece by piece. Today. And if we wanted to translate this, like, to make it so that in order it still makes sense. So, what Raina said in the chat, today I woke up and studied at 6 a.m. That's one way we could translate it, and it probably is the way most people would translate the sentence, but just so that we can underline this and do it piece by piece. 6時に起きて I woke up at 6 a.m. where 6時 Roku is 6, 6時 6 a.m. 6時に起きて 起きて is wake up. And then 勉強しました and studied. And let's break this down even further. So we can see, they start with the time. 今日は today 6時に起きて Actually, this serves as the topic, really, because... Or I guess the time and topic at the same time. The topic technically is myself, but... That's excluded as Japanese, we said, is a context-based language. So, 今日は6時に It says the time here. 6時に起きて And it is using this te form. We have two verbs here. 起きて and 勉強. So in order to use both of them in the same sentence, the first of these verbs is conjugated with the te form as a connector, similar to how we use to, 英語と日本語, that to connects two nouns. The te form is important because it can connect two verbs or multiple verbs. So 6時に起きて, 起きる being to wake up, 起きて勉強しました. And we know that shimashita, this is past tense. If you want to say that I will wake up at 6 and study, you would say 今日は6時に起きて勉強します. Because mas is that present tense. 勉強します. Shimashita is past tense. Another example, this one will be a little shorter. And this one's going to use a lot of katakana, so prepare your brains for that one. Noto, which means notebook. Noto o Did I really not write down the reading of this kanji? That I know what the kanji is, what it means. But I don't want to read it out loud and then say it wrong. So let me open up Jisho again. I can't believe I need to do this. I want to say that it's going to be karite, to borrow. Yes, I was correct. So karite. Don't mind. Yeah. So note o karite. And you can see, again, it's ending with that te to represent te form. Note o karite, kopi shimasu. Kopi shimasu. So note o karite, kopi shimasu. So what this says is, and I will do this one, because this one's going to be hard to translate literally to follow from left to right. This was, I will borrow their notebook and photocopy it. So what we get here, noto, that's notebook. karite. Karite is borrow. Kopi is what they say for photocopying or copying in general. And those are the main words. The o is essentially that will. That you will borrow it. And this shimasu is what tells us that this is in present tense or future tense, that this is something that will happen or is in the process of happening. Note o karite, copy o shimasu, or copy shimasu. So that is the translation there. That is how we connect two verbs. You can see the two verbs are borrow and photocopy. In the previous one, it was okite and benkyou shimashita. So we are connecting the first verb by using te into the second verb, and the second verb is what's determining that tense. And that's really it for today. I know it's kind of a dense topic for today, but it is an important topic to cover. How to conjugate verbs, how to use it in the specific form for requesting, understanding that te or that nde is how we make that request. Like, chotto matte means wait a minute, or matte kudasai means please wait, because that te form indicates a request. In similar meanings to this topic, we have omae. I think this is how we do it. Omae wa mo shin de iru. Yamete could just stop. Iru. So you can see here, the two verbs that are being connected are shinde and iru. That currently, that mo shinde means already dead, and iru represents that sort of being, to be. So omae wa mo shinde iru. Yamete could just stop. And that is te form. I hope you guys were able to understand the lesson, and even if you had trouble, even if there's something confusing you, you're always free to ask in the chat if there's anything that's confusing, or even if you're like watching the VOD, checking out the archive and looking back at something that you missed. You're always free to message me anywhere, and I'll usually be able to answer it, or able to look it up and give you some kind of response. So I hope you guys all had a good lesson. I hope you guys learned something new. I hope you enjoyed what I had to present to you. And that's it. Are there any last minute questions or comments or concerns? You'll have to check your notes again. It's important. That's what studying's all about. And you can always check back the VOD to see what you missed before you came to the classroom before. Even if you came in the middle of the lesson, it might help if you start back at the beginning at the very least to see what you missed. Yoku de ikimashita. Otsukare-sama desu. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your evening. And I'll be live again on Saturday to start a blind playthrough of Doom 2016. I don't play many shooters, but Doom and Doom Eternal have been games that I've been planning on playing for a while. And I figured I might as well start it now. I finished Fire Emblem recently, so I might as well change things up drastically, maybe play a much faster paced game. Play a game I've been meaning to play that's been out for a long time already. Elliot versus FPS. Yeah, it will be interesting to watch. And you have a good night too, Siren. And with that, class is dismissed.